So, you've defeated both the Eye of Cthulhu and the boss of your evil biome and may be wondering what you should do next. Well, one option is to go plunder the dungeon, but before you can do that, you'll need to defeat Skeletron. Otherwise, his big brother, the Dungeon Guardian, will probably just one-shot you. Hey there, my name is Soundrak and welcome back to another installment of my Terraria Journey's End Beginner's Guide series. In this episode, we're going to show you how to take down Skeletron on all difficulties, Classic, Expert, and Master Mode, including arena layout and gear recommendations for all classes. Timestamps are down in the description, and if you find the video helpful, informative, or at the very least somewhat entertaining, please hit that like button and leave me a comment with your favorite weapon for the boss down below. Now let's get to it! Once you've downed the Eye of Cthulhu and the boss of your world's evil biome, you've got a couple of options on what to do next. If you haven't already, maxing out your health is definitely a good idea, and you'll probably get a meteor that can be harvested and turned into a nice mage armor set and a few other pieces of gear. The jungle can be explored for a number of good upgrades if you haven't already, and you'll want to kill the queen bee at least a couple of times, whom we'll cover in another episode. Heading down to the underworld to mine hellstone, or for some of the best pre-hard mode weapons, armor, and tools can also be good at this point, but another great option is to head to the dungeon, which has lots of great items, as well as the shadow key, which will allow you to open shadow chests down in the underworld for even more great upgrades. The dungeon itself always spawns on the opposite end of the world from the jungle, somewhere beyond your world's snow biome, and generally somewhat near the coast. But before you can enter the dungeon safely, you'll need to talk to the old man at the dungeon entrance during the nighttime and click the curse option, at which point he will immediately turn into Skeletron and attack you. In classic difficulty, the fight is pretty straightforward and easy, and the boss just has two attack patterns that combined have a 20-second cycle. In the first attack pattern, which lasts about 13 seconds, the head will try to hover a little bit above you while the hands will periodically swipe at you. The hands only hit for 20 base damage on classic difficulty, so if you have decent defense and health regeneration, their damage will be pretty negligible. The second attack pattern, which lasts for about 6 seconds, is when the boss roars and starts to do his spinning head attack while slowly moving towards you. Whether spinning or regularly running into you, the head does 32 base damage on classic difficulty. So even with decent armor, it will do quite a bit more damage than the hands, but it's slow enough that it's generally pretty easy to avoid. When the spin attack starts, the hands may try to swipe at you, but will otherwise move up and to either side of the head, making this a great time to focus fire them. Oh, and while spinning, the head's classic difficulty defense of 10 will drop to 0, meaning if you want to, you can just ignore the hands and burn down the head for the victory, as killing the hands is completely optional on classic difficulty. So yeah, classic difficulty Skeletron is not too bad. But on expert and master mode, things get taken up a few notches. The hands and the head all have significantly more health and they all do more damage. And although the basic attack patterns and timings are the same, everything moves a bit faster, making the attacks harder to avoid. Additionally, the hands can inflict the slow debuff that halves your horizontal moving speed for 1 to 2 seconds, and the head can inflict the bleeding debuff that prevents health regeneration for 6 to 10 seconds. Furthermore, the head gains an additional 25 defense for each hand that's still alive, and with its significantly increased health pool, you'll definitely want to take out the hands before focusing any damage on the head. And to make things even more challenging, once either of the hands has been defeated or the head is below 75% health, the head will start to shoot small homing skull projectiles whenever it isn't spinning, and will double its rate of fire once both hands are gone. For this reason, it's a good idea to try to kill both hands at about the same time if you can, so that you won't have to dodge a hand and projectiles at the same time. As for the projectiles, I find the best way to avoid them is to move in a circular pattern around the head, as the projectiles don't turn very fast and they will fly off never to be seen again. Projectiles will stop whenever the head spins, making this a great time to get some damage in, but just be ready to get out of the way once the skulls start firing out again. I find that counting to 6 whenever the head spins is a good way to approximate when the skulls will start to fire again. Because of the boss's much higher health on Expert and Master mode, you will generally want to start the fight as close as you can to the beginning of night. If morning arrives while you're still fighting, the boss will enrage and thereafter do a measly 1000 damage per hit. If you fail to defeat Skeletron at the dungeon, the old man will respawn the next day, and you can try again the next night. But once defeated, you'll thereafter have safe passage into the dungeon, and the old man will respawn as the Clothier NPC so long as there is suitable and vacant NPC housing somewhere in the world. As for drops, there really aren't a lot of good items to be had from Skeletron. Most of his drops are vanity items, including Chippy's Couch in honor of the Terraria-focused YouTube channel of the same name. He drops the Skeleton Hand grappling hook, which has 2 hooks but pretty mediocre reach, and I generally prefer the Ivy Whip crafted from jungle materials. The only weapon he drops is the Book of Skulls magic weapon, which is fairly decent but a bit slow moving, and on Expert and Master mode, the accessory he drops is the Bone Glove, which shoots out some crossed bones projectiles every time you attack with your weapon, basically adding a little extra DPS to your loadout. After you've defeated Skeletron at the dungeon, the only way to get him to respawn is to murder the Clothier NPC at night while the Clothier Voodoo Doll accessory is equipped, which has a 1 in 300 chance to drop from Angry Bones and Dark Casters down in the dungeon. But don't worry about the low drop rate, you'll be killing plenty of these guys as you explore the dungeon, making the doll not so hard to get unless you're just really unlucky. For a fighting arena, you'll want lots of space to move around to dodge the boss's attacks. I generally build 2 to 3 layers of platforms near the dungeon entrance, going pretty far from side to side. Be sure to add standard arena buffs such as campfires, heart lanterns, and sunflowers, as well as a star in the bottle if using magic, and a honey bath or 2 for some added health regen. You'll also likely want at least Iron Skin, Regeneration, and Swiftness buff potions, and for more on arena and potion buffs, check out my guide on the topic, link up in the corner. As for gear recommendations, as noted earlier, the fight is pretty easy on classic difficulty, but on Expert or Master mode, mobility is critical, and you'll definitely want to have a grappling hook, Spectre boots or better, and ideally fledgling wings from a sky island which greatly help you to avoid the skull projectiles. If you don't have any wings, then one of the jar in a balloon type of items can be used, ideally with a lucky horseshoe attached to negate fall damage. Beyond that, you'll want to flesh out your accessories with a mix of defensive or health regenerating items, or DPS boosters depending on your preferred weapon type. For all classes, a shark tooth necklace can be a nice boost to your DPS, especially for weapons with lower base damage. Weapon-wise, on classic difficulty, you can use just about anything that is on par with or better than your evil biome boss drops and crafted gear. Like, seriously, this boss is super easy on classic difficulty, especially if you have good arena buffs and maybe a few buff potions. For melee fans, I wouldn't recommend swords because of their low range, though a Star Fury, thanks to its falling star projectiles, works fairly well. Spears similarly suffer from range problems, but yo-yos, boomerangs, and flails work decently well on classic difficulty. On Expert and Master mode, melee is going to be a bit tougher. Your best bets are probably a mix of a yo-yo with at least a white string, along with maybe a thorn chakram from the jungle or a flamerang, which is an enchanted boomerang upgraded with hellstone ore. If you can get both the arms down, the rest of the fight will be pretty easy, but all things considered, compared to other classes, melee is definitely going to be a bit more of a challenge against this boss. For ranged weapons on classic difficulty, bows and guns from your evil biome work just fine, and you can use frostburn, jesters, or unholy arrows with bows, and pretty much any gun ammunition, though meteor shot with its piercing works really well. Throwing ranged weapons also work pretty good on classic difficulty. On Expert or Master mode, I highly recommend using guns, specifically the boomstick from the jungle or the mini shark purchased from the arms dealer, preferably with meteor shot. You'll burn through plenty of bullets, especially with the mini shark, so an ammo reservation potion and ammo box help, and be sure to start the fight with at least a full stack of ammunition on hand. If you like magic weapons, then on classic difficulty the Corruption's Vile Thorn or the Crimson Rod work okay, but you'll probably want to pair them with a higher end gem staff such as Amber, Ruby, or Diamond Staff. The Thunder Zapper also works decently well on classic difficulty, though it is pretty mana hungry. Or just go full meteor suit with a space gun, which will shred the boss pretty fast. On Expert or Master mode, the Space Gun with Meteor Suit also works pretty well, as does one of those high-end gem staffs. And if you've already farmed the Queen Bee, the Bee Gun with a Hive Pack also works well on Expert and Master mode and negates the need to aim at the boss. And finally, for the classic difficulty summoners, a Snapthorn Whip from the jungle along with Feral Claws will destroy the boss, adding in whatever summon minions you might have at this stage of the game. This setup also works pretty well on Expert and Master mode, but if you really want to kick your summoner DPS into high gear, throw on an Obsidian Outlaw suit, and your Snapthorn will destroy the boss in record time. And that's pretty much it for Skeletron. Again, on classic difficulty, the boss is really quite easy, and so long as you have good mobility and maybe practice dodging the boss's attacks, Expert and Master mode aren't too bad, they just take a lot longer. For the worthy Master mode, well, it will probably take more tries and more buff potions, but is basically the same as Master mode, just harder. And once you've taken out Skeletron, the dungeon will be yours to plunder. Happy exploring, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!